I trusted him. Then, I discovered his lies. I always thought I understood what a toxic relationship was. A distant, abstract thing other people endured. Never once did I imagine I'd be the one out searching narcissist boyfriend signs at 2 a.m, feeling hollow and betrayed. But the night I found evidence of his infidelity felt like waking up from a pleasant, all-consuming dream into the worst kind of reality. My hands were trembling as I stared at the screen, his secret messages glowing back at me, breaking every illusion I had about who David really was. From the beginning, David dazzled me. I met him at a friend's housewarming party, his laughter ringing out louder than anyone's. When he focused on me, it was like the rest of the world dropped away. He spoke about books, music, art, anything and everything that seemed to matter. I felt special, chosen, almost addicted to his attention. He told me he'd never felt this way before, said I was the only one who got him, and swore this relationship was different, a kind of soulmate connection. That's how the love bombing started. Messages morning and night, surprise flowers delivered to my office, endless calls just to hear my voice. It was intoxicating. In that whirlwind, I missed the first red flags, the subtle manipulation, the times he'd twist innocent questions, like who was texting me, into accusations or guilt trips. If you really loved me, you'd tell me everything. But when I asked about the same things, he'd accuse me of being insecure, of having trust issues. That's when the gaslighting began. If I confronted him about his stories that didn't add up, he'd stare at me, cool and calm, and say, "You're imagining things again. You always overreact." Slowly, I started to believe him, thinking maybe it was my fault for doubting. He was always so convincing, so gentle in his deceit, so certain in his explanations. The cycle repeated itself, affection and attention, followed by distance, coldness, and then absolute denial when I looked for reassurance. It was abuse. I just didn't want to admit it. Narcissistic abuse is so quiet. It creeps in. One harsh word, one missed call, one gaslit argument at a time. I found myself apologizing for things I never did, for feelings that were real, for needs that suddenly felt unreasonable. I remember one night, after he had been gone for hours without explanation, he walked in smelling of expensive perfume that wasn't mine. "You're so paranoid," he laughed. "I work with women, that doesn't mean I'm cheating on you. Stop being so dramatic." The word infidelity never crossed his lips, but it hung between us, a silent threat. My friends, at least the ones I had left, started to worry. They told me my relationship was toxic, that David's behavior screamed narcissism and manipulation. But I defended him, said he just had a difficult past, that he truly cared about me. I was isolated, alone in my confusion, desperate for his approval. When I tried to pull away, he'd reel me back in with tears and promises, saying he couldn't live without me. Those moments felt like hope, but they were just another twist in the narcissist's cycle of abuse. Everything shattered the night I used his laptop to send an email. His inbox was open, messages with another woman sitting bold and unread. I felt the blood drain from my face as I read their exchanges. "I miss the way you make me feel. She'll never know if you're careful." There it was, the proof of his infidelity and betrayal, written in his own words. The lies about working late, the business trips, the defensiveness every time I asked a question. It was all part of his elaborate manipulation. He was a master of lies, a true narcissist who only cared about his own needs and desires. When I confronted him, his response was venomous and cold. He accused me of violating his privacy, said only someone crazy and obsessed would go through their partner's messages. Suddenly, I was the villain. He twisted everything until I doubted my own reality, a cruel example of gaslighting at its worst. I begged for honesty, for the truth, but all he did was blame me, pick apart my flaws, and tell me I'd ruined the relationship. That night, I realized the depth of his narcissism, how he thrived on power, on making me question my worth, on abusing my love and trust. The scars he left weren't physical, but emotional, silent wounds from months of betrayal, lies, and manipulation. It hurt to accept I'd been trapped in a toxic relationship blinded by his abuse. The pain of his infidelity ran deep, each memory tainted by his dishonesty and selfishness. Leaving wasn't easy. Even after everything, I wanted to believe he could change, that the man I fell for was still hidden somewhere under the narcissist's mask. But I knew, deep down, that I deserved more than manipulation, gaslighting, and emotional abuse. I packed my things in silence, heartbroken, but resolute, and walked out the door, the weight of his betrayal pressing on my chest. In the months since, I've struggled to trust again. His lies replay in my mind, but I remind myself that his abuse, his narcissism, was never about me, always about his need for control and admiration. I still ache when I think about the love I gave him, and the pain he delivered in return. But slowly, I'm learning that real love isn't about power or games, and that no one deserves to be manipulated, abused, or made to feel small in the name of love. Some nights, the apartment, now empty of his things, still hums with ghosts of our old fights. My body remembers before my mind does, the way my shoulders tense at the buzz of my phone, the hollow pit in my stomach at the sound of keys in a lock that isn't his anymore. I replay the arguments in my head, the gaslighting that reduced my self-worth to nothing. David's voice lives rent-free in my mind, twisting my memories, making me wonder if I imagined the relationship was toxic, if his abuse and manipulation were somehow my fault. That's the most insidious part of surviving a narcissist. You don't only lose trust in them, you lose trust in yourself. After I left, I tried to cut off all contact, but a narcissist never gives up their supply so easily. The texts kept coming. Long apologies, wild accusations, desperate pleas, and cold threats, cycling so fast I could barely keep up. All the promises he made, about loving only me, seemed like a sick joke. He needed someone to blame for his infidelity and betrayal, and I was the perfect scapegoat. On some level, I pitied him. How empty you must be to treat love like a game or a drug, chasing the next high of admiration and control, never satisfied for long. The withdrawal from a relationship so laced with manipulation and toxic love is real. I found myself searching for bits of approval, trying to reconstruct the version of myself that existed before. My emotions were raw, exposed, like skin after a burn. I'd see happy couples walking hand in hand and wonder what it was like to love and be loved without suspicion, without that constant ache of doubt. Narcissistic abuse leaves its signature, a steady anxiety in your bones, a hypervigilance against betrayal, the lingering shame of how blind I was to the signs. And yet, I am healing. Slowly, each day, I try to reclaim the pieces of myself that his narcissism shattered. My therapist calls it reality checking, asking myself whose narrative I'm living in, mine or his. I write down the moments that were real, the times I saw the truth beneath his charm, the way he blamed me for his lies, his infidelity, the manipulation woven into every apology. Sometimes, as the rain hits the window at dusk, just like it did the night I first found his messages, I let myself grieve for the love I thought I'd found, for the life I imagined with a man who never truly existed. I know now that David's obsession with control, the never-ending cycles of gaslighting, the ego-driven chaos, were never signs of passion or intense love. They were hallmarks of his disorder, classic narcissism, a textbook toxic relationship constructed on dominance and deceit. His abuse was so carefully disguised as affection that I doubted my own sanity by the end. The word narcissist felt foreign at first, like some accusation too heavy, but it fits all the same. The conversations, the lies, the gaslighting, and the endless manipulation were not my imagination. They were the truth of the relationship that almost hollowed me out from the inside. Freedom doesn't feel like I thought it would. It's bittersweet. The ache is real, but so is the quiet. It's in the gentle solitude of making my own breakfast, of sleeping soundly through the night, of not fearing what I'll find in someone else's messages. I can breathe again. The scars are there, but each day I survive, and maybe even heal, a little more. Now, when someone asks why I left, I just say, I trusted him, and he broke me with every lie. But I learned how to put myself back together without him, one small, painful piece at a time. Some mornings, the silence is almost comforting. No more walking on eggshells. No more overanalyzing the meaning behind every text or sideways glance. And yet, traces of his manipulation still echo in my mind. Sometimes I hear his voice, mocking and sweet at the same time, reminding me, "You're too sensitive," or "You always ruin everything." It's a haunting kind of memory, the legacy of a toxic relationship with a narcissist that continues to live under my skin. Even simple things, like setting my phone down without fear, or leaving the house for hours without needing to report my whereabouts, feel like small victories. But healing after narcissistic abuse is slow, uncertain. I've learned how deep his control ran, the invisible ways he twisted reality and made me question every instinct. It wasn't just infidelity that broke me. It was the constant gaslighting, the bruising power of his derision, the way all my emotions became crazy or overdramatic. At some point in the relationship, my love transformed into survival, tiptoeing through his moods, apologizing for my pain, pretending not to notice his lies because the loneliness of confrontation was too much to bear. I think about the others sometimes, the women I know he lied to, cheated with, or used as leverage. Perhaps they're also sitting by a rain-soaked window tonight, asking the same questions, feeling the same shame. That's the poison of narcissism. No matter what you give, it's never enough. The narcissist moves from person to person, weaving new webs of manipulation and betrayal, taking what he needs and leaving when he's emptied you out. There are days I miss the version of myself I was before the abuse, the woman who loved freely, trusted easily, smiled without thinking first about consequences. That girl seems far away, but in her place is someone wary, yes, but wiser. I see now how David's narcissism and constant manipulation turned me into a ghost of myself, and I made it my mission to find every missing piece. Sometimes, healing looks like crying in the shower, or journaling about the red flags I ignored. Other times, it's talking to friends again, letting laughter back into my life, or simply not answering his desperate, cycling messages. There's freedom in the boundaries I build now, hard-won after months of emotional abuse and relentless gaslighting. The world outside my apartment feels bigger, the air lighter, the future unknown. But finally, it's mine again. I won't pretend it doesn't hurt. The scars from that relationship, from his infidelity and betrayal, are real. So is the ache for what could have been, the hope that maybe something was salvageable. But loving a narcissist means accepting there was never a we, only his needs, his desires, his stories. In the reflection of the rain outside my window, I see myself alone, and yet somehow whole, finally free from the endless cycle of emotional abuse. On the hardest nights, I remember what I survived, and some part of me, bruised but still beating, whispers, "You trusted him. He lied, but now you live for yourself." There are still nights when sleep feels impossible, when the memories replay so loudly in my mind that I wonder if I'll ever truly find peace. Sometimes I see his name flash on my phone and my heart skips, even though I know I should block him. For a long time, I kept hoping for closure, a real apology, an admission of his manipulation, maybe even a moment where he'd say, "I'm sorry for the pain I caused." But closure is just another fantasy when you've loved a narcissist. There's never any real accountability, only shifting stories and fresh excuses. I started therapy, sitting across from a gentle woman with kind eyes who never judged my confusion or my anger. I told her everything, the infidelity, the constant gaslighting, the emptiness I'd felt in his arms. She reminded me that my trauma was not imaginary, that my pain was justified, that abuse can be hidden behind the most beautiful words and gestures. Week by week, I tried to let her words replace his. "You are not too sensitive. You were not crazy. What happened to you was real. Healing doesn't look like a fairy tale. Some days I cry for no reason. Sometimes I catch myself apologizing automatically, even when there's no one to apologize to. There are moments, a flash of perfume on a stranger, a couple laughing in a cafe, when my stomach knots, and all the old doubts rush back. Did I do enough? Was I too demanding? Did I somehow deserve all those lies and betrayals? But those thoughts are quieter now, drowned out by the reassurance that I know what's true. I can name what happened. I can say the words out loud. I survived a toxic relationship with a narcissist. I was a victim of emotional abuse and manipulation, but I am learning to forgive myself and reclaim my life. With time, I've found new routines. I walk in the rain without the impulse to check my phone. I let my friends back in, trusting them with the parts of my story that still sting. I write, sometimes just a word, sometimes a whole letter to myself, reminding the frightened, half-healed version of me that what happened was not my fault. Every small act of self-respect is a quiet rebellion against the cycle of abuse that almost broke me. Even the apartment is changing. I rearranged the furniture, repainted the bedroom, filled the living room with plants and soft light. The space feels gentler, safer, a sanctuary that's all mine. The city outside is still loud and unpredictable, but inside, I'm starting to recognize myself again. Not the person I was before the relationship, but someone braver, scarred, yes, but unwilling to be anyone's victim ever again. Sometimes, when it rains just right, I let myself remember it all. The hope, the heartbreak, the years spent loving someone who only saw me as a mirror for his own ego. I grieve for the time I lost, the confidence he chipped away at, but I am also quietly proud. I did not let his infidelity, his manipulation, his narcissism define me forever. I am more than what he did to me. I can't say I'm grateful for the pain, but I can see the strength it forced me to find. Maybe one day I'll trust again. Until then, I'll keep moving forward. One honest breath, one quiet morning, one night where the only voice left in my head is finally my own. Every morning now, I open the curtains wide, letting in as much sunlight as I can, even if it's just a thin, pale streak breaking through the lingering gray. There's something sacred about this ritual. Standing in the light, reminding myself that I survived the worst parts of his narcissism, the suffocating cloud of manipulation and emotional abuse. Sometimes I stand there for a while, breathing deeply, feeling the gentle ache in my chest, and knowing it belongs to me alone now. The pain is still there, but so is my name, my reflection, my space. With each passing day, the lies he told lose their power. I remember how, for so long, I clung to his apologies, as if they were proof that our toxic relationship could still be saved. His voice would float through my memory, sweet at first, then cold. You're overreacting. You're imagining things. No one else would put up with you. These phrases haunt me less and less, replaced by something quieter but truer. My own words, my own compassion. Sometimes people ask if I think he truly loved me. I never know what to say. Narcissists are experts at imitation, mirroring love, but never giving it. What I know for certain is this. His infidelity wasn't just a single betrayal, but the climax of a pattern, a history of placing himself at the center, spinning webs of manipulation and control, gaslighting me until only his truth seemed possible. Even the good times were shaded by his need to keep me off balance, constantly craving his approval, forever doubting my own instincts. The hardest part, maybe, is forgiving myself, for believing in him, for rationalizing the abuse, for staying after the first betrayal, or the second, or the third. But every survivor of a narcissist carries that wound, that uneasy question, why did I stay? Now, as the days stretch on, I find forgiveness, not as some grand gesture, but in every small act of self-care, every quiet evening spent doing something I love for no one's approval but my own. I cook meals for myself, savoring the flavors. I read in bed, undisturbed, until I drift off to sleep. I walk through the city, umbrella in hand, letting the rain fall on my face, unafraid of being seen. Each choice, no matter how small, feels like reclaiming lost ground after months, years, of walking on eggshells. In the beginning, I wanted a dramatic closure, a confrontation, an apology, some neat ending to fit the chaos he created. But real healing is messier and slower. Sometimes the only closure you get is knowing you survived, that you trusted your own voice, your own truth, even after everything he did to undermine it. Now, when I look in the mirror, really look, I see someone changed, but not ruined. I see all the ways his narcissism tried to fracture me, and all the parts of myself that he never touched. I carry scars, yes, but also the stubborn strength that grew in the empty spaces where his love never really lived. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe new love, maybe just more mornings in the sun, more evenings with soft rain against the window. But every day, the grip of his abuse, his manipulation, his betrayal loosens its hold a little more. Every day, I choose myself. I choose healing. I refuse to be defined by his infidelity, by his gaslighting or his lies. My story is mine again. Some afternoons, when the rain stops and the city softens beneath the sun, I go for long walks. It's become another ritual, a way to remind myself that the world exists outside the confines of his shadow. With every step, I feel lighter, a little more present. It strikes me how quiet my mind can be, without his constant manipulation echoing in my thoughts. There are no more frantic calculations, no bracing for another round of gaslighting, or the icy silence that followed each fight about his latest lie or infidelity. Sometimes I pass a couple holding hands or hear laughter on a passing breeze, and a bittersweet ache rises in my chest. I used to mistake that instability with him, those highs and lows of a truly toxic relationship, for passion or destiny. But now I recognize them for what they really were, the marks of narcissistic love, love that feeds on confusion and control. I grieve the ordinary things I never had, mutual trust, gentle mornings, inside jokes that weren't used later as weapons. Most of all, I grieve the peace I surrendered, just to keep him happy for another day. I think about what I learned in those endless hours of therapy, unraveling his abuse layer by layer, how easy it was for him to twist reality, deny things he'd said, events I'd witnessed, even the pain I so obviously felt. That's the cruelty of gaslighting. It warps your memory, teaches you to doubt your own senses. I remember standing in the bathroom mirror, repeating his words. "You're the crazy one. You're always overreacting," trying to fit myself into the small, frightened version of me he found manageable. The day I finally saw those words for what they were, manipulation tools of a narcissist, was the day I started, in some quiet way, to come back to myself. There were setbacks, of course. Even weeks after leaving, I'd wake up sweating from dreams where I was trapped again in another loop of his abuse. I'd check my phone for messages, half hoping, half fearing I'd see his name. I had to remind myself that every time he'd reappear, it wasn't because he missed or loved me, but because he missed the game. The narcissistic need for attention, for drama, for endless supply. Now, in the clean new quiet of my life, I try to build new rituals. I meet friends for coffee again, laugh too loud at old stories, let people hug me without flinching. I let my family in, bit by bit, sharing the truth in fragile pieces. It surprises me sometimes how much kindness there still is in the world, how many people are willing to listen, to nod, to say me too in return. I wish I hadn't learned the realities of narcissism or emotional abuse so intimately, but I carry that knowledge forward now, not as a weight, but as a shield. There are still bad days. I don't pretend there aren't. Sometimes I catch my reflection unexpectedly and see all the things he accused me of being, weak, broken, unlovable. But I pause, breathe, and remember that those were his projections, not my truth. Healing isn't a straight path. Sometimes I stumble, but now I keep moving forward. I may not be rid of all the scars his lies and infidelity left behind, but I finally feel like they belong in my story, not just as marks of pain, but as proof I escaped. I was manipulated, betrayed, gaslit, and abused by a narcissist who never truly loved anyone but himself, but I survived. I made it out, and every small moment of peace in my day is a monument to that survival. Soon, there will be more mornings when the pain fades a little, more nights when I sleep without dreams of him, more afternoons spent soaking in sunlight rather than sorrow. That is the gift I give myself now: freedom, honesty, and a love that begins with me. Eventually, even the hardest chapters must close. There came a day, not full of drama, but woven with quiet relief, when I realized I no longer waited for a message, a call, an apology that would never truly come. The grip of his narcissism, his endless manipulation and abuse, finally loosened. I walked home through rain-washed streets, letting the city noise replace the echo of his accusations. The pain wasn't gone, but it was finally my own. Not a chain, not a question, just a part of me, healed, or at least healing. I look at myself now, a little older, a lot wiser. I survived the lies, the gaslighting, the betrayal, the toxic cycles of a relationship with a narcissist who never saw me as more than a reflection of his needs. I survived the infidelity, the late nights waiting, the mornings inventing excuses for his cruelty. I survived the loneliness, the awful hollow after the truth, and the uncomfortable freedom that came after I left. Now, my days are slower. Life is a cup of tea by the window. It's music filling an apartment that finally feels like a home. It's the laughter of friends returning, The trust rebuilt one cautious conversation at a time, its nights of dreamless sleep, of peace replacing chaos. His memory still flickers sometimes, in sudden flashes, like lightning at the edge of a summer storm. But now, I let it pass. I whisper kindness to myself, trusting my instincts again, honoring the woman I became through the fire of his abuse. Maybe I'll love again someday. Maybe I won't. For now, I am enough. I choose honesty, even when it hurts. I choose my own voice, steady and real, over any of his lies. I choose the sunlight. I choose my freedom.